Hearing no objection, we're now in open session. So, regarding the response to notice of potential violation 2016-1, we will make certain edits according to our discussions in the deliberative session. We will then sign it, send it out, and also follow the public disclosure dictates of a violation.
So moved.
So moved. Any objection? Hearing no objections, let's move on to the next. It's a response to advisory opinion 2016-3, and has confidentiality been waived on this?
Yes.
So we can discuss this in open session. Is that correct? All right. So, Dee, is this yours?
It is.
Okay. Do you want to jump in and catch me up to date?
This is the one where Joanne Inglis, who is now in employee relations, an executive in employee relations, wants to volunteer to serve on land use boards. Given her past experience, she has about 20 years in land use departments up here. And we discussed a number of items, but I think and then you delegated it to Lisa and I to do some further exploration. And we met with both municipal attorneys and with Assembly Council. And generally, there's sort of a difference of opinion. One group says, hey, the code sometimes says, no, you can't have an employee. Ethics board is one of those. Other times that it expressly provides for an employee. So that group takes the position that if it's not expressly prohibited, then it's allowed. No further ethical review. Assembly Council points out that if you look at the actual ethics code, they define members appointed to a public body as excluding employees. And that's determinative. I wasn't sure that really could determine whether an employee could be on the board or not, that was as definitive as she thought. However, in this case, all the land use boards fall under, it's called Title IV is the board section, but it falls under the regulatory and adjudicatory boards and commissions. Mm-hmm. All the land use boards involve adjudicatory functions, including hearings and decisions. So the salient part of this decision is if you read in the fourth paragraph, the administration, read that's the conclusion of this, which I think was where the board was heading.
The administration is often a party or participant for these boards.
Mm-hmm. And following that, I say, hey, there's these two positions, but we really don't have to decide that larger municipal issue, because right now we're really looking at the ethical issue of can you serve two masters? Is that an inherent conflict of interest for you as a high-ranking administrative official? And she is. She's an executive. I think she's now the head of labor. To be on a board in which administration comes before the board as a party. So really, this would be the finding of this board, and so I think that's what deserves the most discussion. That we're all comfortable with that. The rest of it just says we don't really have to make the harder decision. So that the board finds that the last paragraph, the board finds that given your current position as an administrative executive, you should avoid serving on a board that entails adjudicatory functions in which the administration may appear as a party, which is all the land use boards. Oh, and then by footnote, by the way, I did note the footnote number 2, the board did discuss other issues such as the possibility of past access to confidential information and past participation in current matters, but felt that you would be able to manage these conflicts.
There's only one other thing that I might go through just quickly. I think this section, where you put 1.15.03, that might be fine to quote, but I dredged up the notes that I had of that conversation with Julia, because I knew that once I walked out of that conversation, I would forget what we talked about. But one of the things that she did was she cited actually, kind of for her position on this, the definition of an appointed public body of the municipality in the section that's 1.15.110, which specifically, I think you looked at the section that talks about the provisions applicable to members of an appointed public body. I remember from the
she did the definitional section.
Yeah, and the definition of an appointed public body of the muni, when you look at B, under that section is any municipal commission, board, committee, blah, 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 created by ordinance with members of the public appointed subject to confirmation by the Assembly and the School Board, whether sitting in public session, including advisory, and regulatory municipal entities. And so she basically said she focused on this members of the public. And then she also focused on this definition of a municipal employee in that same section that said that a municipal employee, she pointed out that it says any person employed by the muni or corporate authority owned by the muni, whether full or part-time, but excluding elected officials and excluding members of the public serving as members of the appointed public body of the muni. So she basically said the definition of the muni employee excludes members of the public serving as members of an appointed public body, and the definition of an appointed public body in the muni really pertains to, folks including members of the public appointed. She focused on those definitions.
So should we really just, instead of maybe quoting this, put in the 110 definition of members of the
Maybe.
appointment?
Maybe
Maybe just
we-
that one section?
yeah, maybe we
Because
should
it
figure
does
it out.
add that flair of member of the public.
Yeah.
Right.
But
And I-
being that employees are serving on boards
Right.
through the code, that just can't be a per se rule.
Mhm.
I mean, she was interesting. She said that she kind of wrote this code, and she was pretty emphatic that at least her intent was to
Her
make sure
intent.
that members of the public, that folks on boards not be municipal employees, but that was her.
Right.
And she was writing it. Yeah.
And I think what we
Anyway.
found out since is that many of the boards need some of the employees. Number one, the boards are short, but because of the expertise involved.
Mhm.
But anyway, I don't think it's a blanket per se rule, nor did I discuss it with Lisa, think that you could put that in a definitional section of your ethics code, and that would define the world of whether employees could be on boards and commissions. But I thought that was it was never probably intended in terms of when the Assembly adopted this, or that they were making that decision.
Yeah, at least for the ethics code, right? It doesn't necessarily sound like it's appropriate for the ethics code to start defining what exactly counts as a board
Mhm.
and commission. And so this way of doing it is sort of like on a case-by-case basis, saying, look, in this particular case, given your position and the board you want to serve on, that's not appropriate, that there's obvious potential conflicts of interest.
Right,
And-
yeah, we don't have to get into a larger debate, but I thought it was interesting to reference it, that it is out there, and that we're not blind to it. I guess that's the other thing, is we're not blind. But then it gets back to, so Lisa, I think you're right, I think maybe we should put the 110 language in here. And in fact, if you'd be willing to improve that part of this opinion, I'd sure appreciate it.
No problem.
I happen to have left that meeting at some point, but at any rate, for good reasons. But then again, it gets back to this board's decision. Do you all feel that it is that someone from an executive, an administrative executive, could serve on an adjudicatory board that involves the administration? I'm not sure that's a hard, fast, no rule, but it sure falls under all these. I mean, don't you have a lot of hurdles, though? Do you have to disclose it every single time? Or I can tell you, I'm the attorney for the Board of Equalization, and we used to have a conflict situation between the board and or potential conflict between the board and the staffing by the appraiser's office, assessor's office. Like, we have two opinions on it, and in the old days, and it appeared in every single brief that every person who ever appealed a Board of Equalization decision brought up this potential conflict. So it was problematic. Now, the judges always ruled in our favor on that, but it was somewhat problematic. So I think that's a larger decision for the board, is that sort of a blanket. The way I write it, it's almost a blanket rule. You cannot, if you're part of the administration, serve in an adjudicatory capacity.
If you were not part of the big executive leadership team within the administration, but you're just a regular old employee, could you serve on an adjudicatory?
Just more at a low level.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through like all the ramifications.
Well,
of
but a lower level
anything.
would have more maybe job impact
That's what I
potential.
worry about.
Right.
You know, there's some weirdness at first, because it's kind of written in a way, it's kind of like, hey, you're a bigwig in this executive
Mhm.
team, and, the executive team and the administration's, key prerogatives come before the board, so your role as a really, fundamental leader on that team is what sort of, excludes you, but I don't know if that's completely
Well, but
necessarily the
it
case.
looks to me like this is written very specifically for this person.
It was.
Well,
so-
but it's a pretty broad rule, I state.
Yeah, but you're also addressing a specific fact section in here that you don't. I don't think that these decisions need to address every possible scenario.
Yeah.
If another one comes before us, we can address it with this in mind.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to track down the different logical
But you know, it's
conclusions.
interesting though with Joanne. If you looked at her, if you got away from a blanket rule, which I've relied on here, I don't see why there really personally isn't any reason. I wish Becky was here for this. Be on one of these boards, and at the beginning, I mean, first of all, everybody would know who she is for the most part, but is to disclose at the beginning that I am a member of the administration. Do either of the parties have a conflict with that? And of course, you get the quorum issues, but could that, because she has a lot to offer for these boards,
Mhm.
so is it a manageable conflict?
It really is an appearance thing, in my mind.
Mhm.
I think, Mark, as you described it right now, Dee, just if I were someone bringing my case in front of the board, and I knew that I had a high-level member of the administrative executive team on that board, I might not be too happy about that, even
Mhm.
if that person was super knowledgeable. I don't know.
And even though we
You know,
have it in
yeah,
other
which is,
instances
I think, what
in
you
the
wrote,
city, yeah.
basically, which is you're a member of this high-level team, the administration appears before these boards, you, under these facts, just doesn't feel right. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
what your conclusion was, and I think that's right.
I guess how often is it the case that the administration is a party
Yeah, that's a good
in the
question.
cases that
Well, see, and that's why I wish Becky was here, because I know they bring the staff recommendation, but I think it's usually like a code interpretation or conditional use permits, like what are the conditions? So I think they're a moving force. It may not be win or lose, maybe
Right.
they want this interpretation of the code or.
Because it is true, because like up until now,
Mhm.
what we have done for people who are pretty clearly conflicted is we've said, okay, well, disclose and don't participate if you
Mhm.
have, if the board decides that you have a conflict. That's what we've done up into, including some cases that were, like, again, I think we've had some cases where people, one person had a contract with the mayor's office to be doing some work and had been appointed by the mayor to be on, not MLP, maybe even MLP, but some, in one of those, and we're like, that's serving to mass, and
Mhm.
what we eventually just did was, well, when you have a conflict, just disclose, so
Mhm.
that would be my question, is that this would be a departure from the way that we've done it in the past. I've never liked the way we've done it in the past, but I don't see anything in the code that really prevents us from doing more, except going, in most of these
Mhm.
cases, where the employee question wasn't there,
Right.
you could go back to the assembly maybe and say, remove this person because they're too conflicted, but in most cases, we've just simply
Just, it's
said-
almost impossible to move people from the
Well, and
board.
that's right, and so,
So don't ever
up
rely
until
on
now,
that.
every other case
Yeah.
where the people were conflicted,
Yeah.
even when we could anticipate they'd be conflicted
Mhm.
reasonably, on fairly often, we would just, we've been saying, disclose, let the body review the disclosure. If it's significant, then you need to step out.
If I could make a suggestion, this is a pretty important issue, actually, contained within a little teeny opinion, is maybe to wait till Becky is here, because she served on all these many of the land boards. She's appeared before, I know she's been on it, but she's appeared before
Right.
them. She's a regular, in fact, in front of our land boards. And maybe even invite Julia here, because I think one of the reasons I landed on this position is that I knew she's over here was Julia, says absolutely employees should not be on the boards for any reason, and if you can't buy that, well, at least understood you can't serve two masters. So I went, But now as I'm here, I'm thinking, gosh, but think of Julianne could be a very important asset on that board. Maybe because she's an executive, though, it goes too far. I just don't know. So maybe I think Becky and Julia, maybe at the same meeting, might be very helpful.
I think so, and Julia was pretty emphatic. She said, and because she was a primary drafter of this thing, she was quite emphatic that, for those instances where it's good to have or appropriate or desirable to have a municipal employee as a member of the board, the code so it states, those specific boards where it so designates that, you shall have a member of, the meeting in this particular section. And I do think her point about the definitions can't be overlooked,
Mhm.
I take that seriously, just as like legally, but I do think it would be helpful to have a broader discussion, maybe.
Okay.
And it's interesting, by
Julia.
the way, that the ethics code excludes employees. Now, I think,
Right.
why is that? Why shouldn't an employee who has an employee perspective be on the board? is there really, what's the conflict there? Why would you not have an employee? Well, maybe so it looks totally impartial. I don't know, so it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I guess that's the idea, that this is the public's chance to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
have a
there,
role
so
in
maybe that's
government,
the
but if
public
you're on
again.
that-
I wrote down a bunch of notes.
Or
So I
maybe
should go
there
back and
might
reread
be
what she
some
told us.
fear that a municipal employee would be exposed to confidential information about another employee.
Correct.
Hmm.
I think it's a good idea. Move this till next
Because it's
month.
an important issue, and
Yeah.
you know, the
Yeah.
eighth floor has asked me about it again and again.
Okay.
You keep getting it, Dee.
Yeah,
People ask
because,
me about this all the time.
There are, again, because someone like Gillian probably really could add a lot to some of these
Sure.
land use boards, and have that kind of expertise.
On the other hand, someone else could add value to a board too. It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
have to come from this source. Right, I mean,
Well, Gillian is saying it's when the boards are short more,
Yeah.
that, you know, that it's hard to get the qualified
yeah.
people on
No,
some
I
of these
I
boards.
believe it.
Well, that's the thing, I think if
Yeah.
you think about the boards as like, one way to think about it is like, from a, democratic theory perspective, boards are a great chance
Mhm.
for ordinary citizens to have a direct say in
Mhm.
some of the policies and workings of government. In which case, you wouldn't want employees taking up those slots, because it's a
Mhm.
slot for, an
Right.
outsider, but a member of the general public to be a part of the city's workings.
But when
But the problem is if the
yeah.
boards aren't getting filled, then,
Right.
and you have, it's better that the seats actually be filled by someone rather than no one.
And someone who has
good.
And someone who could be, a real contributor, and so.
Okay, let's move this till next meeting then. I think it's really smart.
Do you want Lisa to do her edits by the next meeting so
No,
we
I
have?
Yes,
think a
please.
draft would be
Just that little
helpful.
case?
because-
Yes, please.
yeah, Because
Oh, that
then
little
we could
case.
even show that draft to
Okay,
Julia.
Terry.
I've got to
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you, sorry.
All right,
everybody.
no, take care. We'll see you next month.
See you next time.
Okay. The only other question I have is
See you later.
this sentence, just kind of,
Okay.
and maybe I just misunderstood it. I'm in the big paragraph.
Uh-huh.
This runs counter to a conflict in interest analysis.
Okay.
What does that mean? It's
Conflict
just
of interest.
conflict of interest.
Analysis.
This runs counter
So
to a
maybe you
conflict
said
of
this
interest.
raises, well, so yeah, I didn't know what to say.
You
Does
see
it
what I'm
raise
saying? Like-
concern or is it definitive?
Well,
I don't
but
know.
this runs counter to a conflict of interest analysis.
Yeah, conflict of interest.
The question I have is this counter to a,
Sort of like your intuition, this runs, you
Right.
just sort of think that this has to be wrong, so, okay, so that, I don't know
I-
how to change it though.
I don't have an answer. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to capture what you're trying to say. This runs counter. I think what you're
Well,
trying to
how-
say
okay.
is that this runs counter to.
How about this is counterintuitive to appears to be counterintuitive to a general conflict of interest analysis. Well,
Does
Well,
it
con-
have anything, is there anything, how we have these purpose and intent sections in the beginning, and
Yeah.
talk about just sort of general
Uh-huh.
principles that we're trying to adhere to in the ethics code? Is there something in there that might
Yeah.
work, the assembly intends this code to be interpreted for fair, honest, and impartial dealings with members of the
Yeah.
public to ensure, is there something
Yeah.
in here, is it a spirit type thing? Is it kind of?
How about just this raises concerns?
Concerns.
Concerns with conflict of interest.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. Because I'm thinking
Mhm.
a conflict of interest analysis can go either way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how can you run counter to
Okay,
the
so
analysis?
this
I
raises
think
concerns with
yeah,
conflict
I
of interest, and then that fits in
There,
perfectly with
yes.
the last half, as well as raising the
Right.
specter of the appearance of
Okay.
impropriety.
Does that make sense? Like there was something about that
Yes.
phrase. That just,
Mhm.
Okay, good. Can you make those changes and we'll bring them to the next
Yes.
meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
then
That's
and we'll
right.
bring Julia and
Becky. So
and
we'll have to
Becky
see if they're
will be.
available.
Do we expect Becky to be back by then?
They didn't say anything about that.
Right. We
so
don't know.
We don't know.
Let's just hope. But I agree. It'd be nice to have her input also because she practices in this.
Oh,
area.
yeah, she's before the boards all the time.
Okay.
Oh, Terry left. We can assume then maybe that the Monday between meetings is going
Oh.
to be good for the next one because we're not scheduled out past this month.
Right.
So we were going to have a discussion before Terry left about scheduling.
Maybe what we could do is one more month and then do another scheduling. The reason is I've noticed, and maybe it's just my interpretation, but Mondays, people are kind of foggy on Mondays. I count myself among those people. I don't know.
Must have a rough weekend.
Well, a lot of people are gone on the weekends and they come back and then they're just walking through the. I mean, I don't have any problem moving it to another day during the week. But why don't we schedule it for the next Monday and then we can.
I think Dee would concur from
Yeah,
her
I come in
email
on
that she
Sundays to
gave
write
Sunday.
Right.
To write opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Mondays are tough.
My quote was, Monday meetings are hell.
That's what I was
Oh, did you say that?
Yeah.
I said that
Oh,
in the email.
So that's why you're
working.
smiling. Because
I'm working yesterday writing opinions.
Right,
That's a great way to get you in the spirit.
right. Yeah,
By
really.
simple observation.
So
And
maybe
she
we.
was here too.
I was here too, working, yeah.
No, I think another day in the week would also work. I don't know how you guys feel, but let's discuss it. Let's do one more Monday, and then we'll move it from there. How does that sound? Okay.
Good
All right.
plan.
Yeah, I just feel it, and I feel it
Yeah.
myself too.
Oh.
Mondays are tough because most Alaskans are out and running around doing something on the weekends. Okay. Are we on to 6C? I don't have the agenda before me right now.
6C is one of Terry's, so I think we're gonna postpone
Yeah, I
it.
remember, I need to get him to get going on that one.
Which one is that? Let me.
This is Lance Wilbur.
That's well, but no, I don't have, wasn't somebody gonna write something up on that?
Terry.
Yeah, Terry was.
I don't have
And he
it.
really needs to listen to the tape to be able to do it at this point.
Did you
Employ-
diligence? Remember, was he gonna get it from you or something like that?
He never asked me for it. Do you
Can I
want me to
suggest
send it to
Send
him?
it to him, because it's too far past
Okay.
now. That, by the way, at least I
Send-
wanted to thank you. It's very helpful when you do that.
What's that?
Send the part of the meeting, the tape that
Yeah.
has to do with the decision
Yeah.
that you're.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant we were beyond a deadline or
No.
something. Okay. Yes, please do that. And
Okay.
and did he agree to write something on this?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was pretty complex. We had a huge debate on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Were you
we
here for
had.
that one, David?
No, these are
Oh,
from
yeah.
my.
We,
So David's.
It was really fascinating. It touched on a lot of aspects. It was
Okay.
really tough. So that would be good anyway to have. In fact, do you mind sending me a copy of that
Mhm.
tape too? Because I'd like to review it before the meeting.
Okay.
And you know, if you have time, but it was it would be an hour tape. It was
Oh, wow.
a long time.
Okay.
Oh, before we go on to the next one, David,
Yes.
just because opinion 2016-6, which was Mr. Gustafson, he sent back an email. I sent him a signed copy of the opinion. He said, please pass on my appreciation to the board
Okay.
members for their professionalism and their commitment to the time necessary to address such important ethical issues.
Oh, very
I think
good.
you should get your kudos.
Okay. Thank you.
On that, we need it.
You need
No, that's
that.
very nice. Yeah. It's nice to be appreciated.
He was very nice. I will
Yeah.
mention to you guys that he called me up. I think he had gotten from you, Lisa, or somewhere he'd gotten a draft of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a he called me up and he said that he saw at the end of the letter, remember we added something that really emphasized that if your job changes or if any of these facts really change, come back to us. And he
Mhm.
said, well, you know, one of the things that I noticed is that I'm probably going to be paying more in connection with the build out for my, his little, hose that he has to tap, like the build out on the
Mhm.
facility
Mhm.
in order to extract water. He's probably going to have to pay more than other people have. And I kind of explained to him, I said, look, we really weren't trying to freak you out by adding that, like every little change.
I was going to say,
No, no,
never
right,
invite
yeah.
an engineer.
What I'm
No.
trying to.
Yeah, I know.
As a district,
I know.
What I'm trying to tell you is what we're really concerned
Yeah.
is if there's anything substantively that changes, that probably changes in the direction of making it feel more like a
Yeah.
conflict. I said, that's an example of that just sort of underscores why this is additionally
Right.
above board.
Sure.
But I said just big stuff, and then I gave him several examples, and I said, you
Okay.
could call me or call Dee.
Yeah.
If anything big changes that you think might move in the other direction, and then we'll figure out if it's something that.
And I feel very comfortable letting you guys filter that.
Okay.
Right, unless the board
He was
feels
very
otherwise.
nice,
That's
yeah.
great.
He was very
Great.
nice, I think he's clearly paying attention.
Good. Okay.
Hey, can I ask you, did we ever get our opinion out to Robert Harris?
Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, that,
Didn't I?
Okay.
I signed that one
yeah.
Okay.
some time ago, I think.
Yes.
Oh, that was one
Yeah.
you wrote.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a done one.
There's just some
Yeah.
concerns. Okay.
Gosh, I hope so. I thought
No,
that went out
it's
a long
gone,
time ago.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to move 2016-4 to next month,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And then 2016-5, confidentiality has been waived. Can we stay in open
Right.
session?
Mhm.
And that is D.
Mhm.
Let me pull it up, and then you can get me up to speed on this one.
And this is Dollars for Dogs. They're a nonprofit
Mm.
group that supports APD's Canine Unit.
Mhm.
And that, by the way, under the tax code is an express exempt purpose, that this is what these organizations are created for and are recognized, so it's nothing unusual. So they give a certain amount of money to APD per year, or they actually fund specific things, like where you can buy the 2 dogs and go on a trip, versus just giving APD $50,000. The new chief wanted this arrangement to be reviewed for any ethical concerns. I think part of the administration would prefer a grant thing that, that $50,000 gets given to APD directly and APD does what they want. The organization has refused to do that. They've done it this way successfully for 30 years. And that's not I put in this opinion, that's not our issue. Our issue is under the current arrangement, are there any ethical? So first I talk about, and by the way, I said the details of the procedure to APD are set forth in the letter attached as Exhibit A. And I don't know if we should call these exhibits or attachments.
I did that. I made it Exhibit A, but I could
Yeah.
easily call
Yeah.
it.
Where are you?
I'm in the 4th paragraph down.
Okay.
And I said salient facts include that all requests for dogs and equipment are submitted through the chain of command. All payments to third parties, the kennel and vendors, are made by a Dollars for Dog DFD credit card with a paper trail which is easy to track and audit. And DFD pays the traveling officers a per diem. In the past, ABD employees could serve on the DFD board, but the current command staff, I didn't say wisely, but the current command staff has changed this practice to designate an APD officer to act as a liaison and to attend board meetings. So no longer is there that overlap where it's actually an employee on the board. And so the question is, gifts. Well, I say the ethics code is directed at gifts to employees, not really to it doesn't really involve entity gift giving. Whether the administration would prefer a grant basis donation is not a decision within our jurisdiction. And this is exactly why these 501c3s are set up, to just do this to support some aspect of government function. So maybe really what we should be looking at is appearance of impropriety, and undue influence.
Lisa, can we put that on the next page too?
Yes.
Just so it's not empty title.
And I think people would have to read this more carefully, I think we were so impressed with the level of detail that Lieutenant Schmidt presented to us and the checks and balances that we got less involved in some of these ethics issues. But anyway, I said, so is there any undue influence with respect to the officers traveling to select the canines? And I said, and the fact that they're paid per diem. Per diem by third-party vendors is provided for in our PNPs, our procedures and policies and procedures. And remember, we took that kind of stuff out of our review in the gift section. We said that is left to administrative. But I didn't see any problem there anyway, because any lavish request for per diem could be easily determined by either DFD, its auditors, the IRS, or APD command staff. So the fact they could pay per diem does not seem to be an indication of undue influence with respect to the traveling officers. Well, then how about the influence on the Canine Unit? And this is what I say, if the DFD board can dictate which officer is given a dog or receives equipment, then there is a concern with undue influence. But the ethics board noted that all requests for canines, equipment, and travel are made through the APD command to the APD liaison. As long as this practice is followed and APD command exercises supervision with respect to that unit, that this ethics issue should be manageable. I think there was some issue in the past of that. It was the DFD board saying, well, yeah, we think it's time for this person to have a new dog, and I'm sure there's people here at this table that know some of that history.
Hit
Hit 'em.
Hit him.
Tap, tap.
And I'm sure there's some people at this table that know some of this history. Quick, hit him. Okay. And then APD as an organization, I just say, hey, look, they work hand in hand. There seems to be extensive checks and balances. We didn't find any other problem. In fact, it seemed like a very clean operation. Here.
I disagree with that last paragraph. I mean, we did find, their checks and balances are not what they should be.
So, I thought
Because they get you a blank check to go.
Oh, no, they don't. They use the credit cards now.
Oh, we do. We
No,
know.
I see.
the one company would not take credit cards, and they issued a blank check. Signed
Okay.
blank check to go to them.
And I think that was like a one-time deal, then other than that, it was always
they've
done by
gotten
credit
dollars
card.
several
Okay,
times from that particular one in Pennsylvania.
so,
And the same thing with the I think their checks and balances could stand some improvement.
Mhm.
You know, just to eliminate, not that anything would ever come up, but the possibility is there. That's what worries me. And and the same thing with the per diem. You know, it's, you know, they pay, they use a credit card for whatever, and it's not like getting municipal per diem or whatever, or state. You know, they review them all, and some of them they reject. Where this one, you know, it doesn't appear to be that check and balance. So I think we should come up with different wording or something to affect that.
Like for example, have some language in here that addresses that particular set of circumstances. If you go to a vendor who does not accept
Right.
credit
There needs
cards,
to be-
then
There needs to be something, you know,
A
a
credit
callback
card.
and have them send a registered check, you know, a
Right.
registered bill with a certified check in it or something to that.
I
But to
mean,
give,
once the dog is chosen, then have the money
to give an officer a blank check
blank check.
that's signed. You know, I mean, it could be lost, it could be.
Yeah, well, Ted, I guess, you know, maybe I should have avoided this whole thing, but I thought like Terry and Becky were very impressed with their checks and balances.
Mhm.
But you're pointing out a good concern, but probably that's not an ethical issue, that's administrative, how they're running their own group. So I'm not sure that,
Well, it would be unethical if they.
well, if someone stole
violated it.
something.
Yeah, you know, if they, you know.
Well, I mean,
The
you-
chances of an officer getting together with one of the people working there, say that, you know, put an extra $2,000 on that check and I'll split it with you, or whatever, you know. It's,
Can we add something like
Mhm.
the facts? Our understanding is that credit cards are used and the bills are, and the statements are reviewed by the administration, or something like that,
Yeah.
and that is a fact that we're assuming.
Mhm.
That if it's something other than that, then they need to take extra caution to bring it back before us, or something like that. I can't.
well, I mean, this.
I mean, I don't know.
It did come before us, you know, where he stated that they take blank checks to this one vendor. You know, that's a signed blank check.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. So it's typically the case that credit cards are used for the purchase, but it has, at least on some occasions, occurred where the
Right.
transaction has been by check. And when we talk about, I mean, if that particular subset of facts arises, the check scenario, are we saying that creates the potential for a
Mhm.
problem? Are we saying that is a conflict situation or not, or a problem
Mhm.
situation? What are we saying about that?
Right.
Are we saying, boy, clean that up so it doesn't, what are we saying? What is our conclusion?
Yeah, what do we
Facts
want?
and facts, yeah. Do we know? Maybe we don't know.
But we know it happened
It's
at
happened
least
at
twice
least twice.
to that same vendor.
Was this testimony by somebody? Is that how you got
Yeah,
that information?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe,
I think that was the concern, that's why it came before us, because this is
Mhm.
how it's been done in the past, and this administration looked at it and went, oh, that looks a little
Yeah.
sketchy.
Mhm.
And was this administration, like Dee, maybe you know, were they concerned about that sort of unique circumstance in which checks were used? Or are they?
our administration wasn't, no, they just
Yeah.
they thought it'd be easier just for Dollars for Dogs to give ABD $50,000 a year and not give Dollars for Dog any
They wouldn't do it that way.
control, and
Mm.
the Dollars for Dogs said, no,
Yeah.
we are going to be involved with this process. And
Mhm.
again, that's not our decision,
Right,
so
right,
yeah.
right.
But yeah, okay, so, and that's good too, that you remembered it as well, Kathleen,
Right.
because I remembered those two, and I didn't remember the
Mhm.
concern on this side of the table. So, first of all, in my fourth paragraph here, I will, Salient Facts, instead of all payments of third parties are made by DFT credit card, I'll put generally payments are made. Now, we go to
Mhm.
either footnote there, at least 2 instances of checks, but I'd
Mhm.
have to look at that, because one of them had to do something with a registered letter or something.
Well, the fact that they were blank checks,
Mm.
you know, that's
Yeah.
not the fact that there was a check written, but the fact that it was a blank check.
Remind me, so the APD officers were traveling to these other places with blank
Yeah.
checks
Blank checks.
from the municipality or from APD?
No, not from the municipality, from Dollars for Dollars.
It was my recollection that he said this was a favorite place of theirs,
Right.
and this person,
Pennsylvania.
they only took checks. They would not take a credit card. They want to continue going back there, and as a matter of fact, it's their top choice to go to.
It's a favorite place
It's
of,
their
Yeah.
of dollars to dogs?
to go buy their dogs. The police department
Okay.
wants to go to these
And
people.
they
That
don't know the
means that
price
will
of the
be the
dog before they
continued
get there.
Yeah.
Because they have to review all the dogs, and dogs are different prices.
So they show up with a blank check?
Yeah.
Yeah, they show.
Well, how about this, payments to third
It
parties?
seems so archaic.
Are,
I know.
Yep,
That sounds like a
Are-
pterodactyl way of doing things.
Byzantine.
are
Right.
made,
Yeah.
okay, but how about here, guys? Payments to third parties are made by a DFD credit card, or checks, and then leave it there for now, but then come back here.
Mhm.
What do we want to say about that?
Mhm.
Well,
But I think we
well, I
should
could
be
just say,
consistent
instead
in
of, just say,
what check.
one concern was the use of blank checks to third-party vendors transmitted by officers.
Mhm.
And the board sees potential for problems. Well, the board notes the wide array of unpleasant outcomes.
But you're right, though. I agree with Lisa. What do we want from it? Do we want to tell them to do something differently?
Well,
Do
no,
we
but
want
you know
to?
what I really am wondering?
Yeah.
What did we tell him? I mean, just when we had this discussion, I remember the officer coming in, and you were right, Dee, he was so prepared.
Mhm.
I mean, he just kept going. He would have been there all afternoon if he felt we needed all afternoon to get the facts from him. I mean, he
Mhm.
was very gracious with his time, and he really wanted us to understand. But my recollection, and I admit that I was hazy on some of the facts, probably much more hazy than maybe Ted was, for example, on all these details. But I seem to remember that when he left, we said, we're okay with this.
Yeah, that we liked your checks
That
and
we-
balances,
that
that's
we-
what's sort of
Yeah,
interesting.
and we may have said that before we actually all had a chance
Yeah.
to do this kind of reflection that we're now
Mhm.
doing, which is, there are some things that they did that are really good. There are
Mhm.
some things that they're doing. There is a practice here that's not good. I would feel a little funky if we sent out this opinion before we
Mhm.
actually had a conversation with Officer Schmidt again,
Well-
because we up upon further reflection, maybe, I haven't listened to the tape, maybe we need to talk with him again, I don't know. Maybe we don't, maybe we need to just listen to that again and see what he said, but it seems to me that we may have represented our position to him that we may be now retracting a bit from.
I would love the chance to be able to talk to him again because I wasn't here the first time.
Oh, you weren't? Oh,
It was kind
No,
of.
I wasn't here. I would love to hear from him again, but I don't want to hold things up.
It's a
You
very
guys
nice
are-
program.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's not our, I'm sorry.
Oh, he did say that there was a list that they get beforehand, and the dogs are listed on there and their prices. They
Mhm.
just don't know which ones they want until they go
Mhm.
down there and see the dogs, and then the list is there. If the check doesn't add up right,
Yeah.
So they know the minimum and the
That's
max.
fair.
Yeah, that's
So
how
a
that-
dig- That to me feels like it's not, it may be a blank check, but it is not a blank check without a check.
Yeah, this is
No, it's within a
Balco,
range.
and
Yeah.
Balco
Within
costs
range.
$10,000, and this is who we have here. you
Well,
know.
no, especially if they have a list of the dogs, the dog's name, plus next to a dollar amount, the dog shows up, responds to this name.
Yes.
All right.
That's a check and balance.
And then that corresponds with a certain amount. That should be able to be checked against the check
Maybe
amount.
that's why we were okay with it. Maybe.
Was that discussed? Did he go into
I
that
remember
kind of-
that.
Yeah, he did go into
I
that
remember
detail.
that
I
one.
did all kinds of stuff. I
Yeah.
have to say, I was kind of asleep with the switch for this one. This one was a
We
little
had so
bit.
many of
Is there a way of, maybe we don't need to bring them in because I hate to take more APD time, but can we confirm that somehow? I think that would be a very helpful fact to put in here.
Right.
Because that kind of detail I feel like
Yeah, so
this,
we just delete it.
like a little due diligence would go a long way
To
in this
listen to the
opinion.
tape.
Yeah, because especially if they came to us and said, look, here's what's going on.
Mhm.
We want to run this by you. And it was an honest assessment. They're not saying, hey, we are doing this. But
Mhm.
this is what we've noticed, and they have some concerns. Then we should go into the detail, especially address something that they may have had a concern with.
And can I tell you, another approach as well could be to not say we like your checks and balances and not mention this problem, but send a private letter to the chief and say, although it may or may not be an ethical issue, all the board members were struck with the fact that blank checks are being sent. And there was some, concern as citizens about that practice.
I'd almost
and-
rather
and
have it in the
awkward
opinion.
You have an opinion?
I
The
would,
awkward
because
position of
other
the
people are going to know about it other than the chief. And I don't know, I just get the impression, not having been there, but that it would be a nice addition to the opinion to have that counter. Like, look, we talked about this, we discussed it, and this is our understanding, and this is why we think it's okay.
Mhm.
Not just sort of, hey, we're using credit cards, knowing that they actually don't always 100% of the time use credit cards. I'd hate to just gloss over it without some kind of discussion about it.
Did you listen to, by chance, to the tape?
I didn't
Or not?
listen.
I mean, I think, there was so much discussed,
Yeah.
and that could very well be what we concluded, which was, I think we spent a lot of time, kind of like we did with Gustafson, trying to just understand
Yeah.
what was going on.
Is there? That's such a fine point. Is there a way of finding out from Officer
Well,
Schmidt?
I'm wondering if you go on to something else, I might be able to get a hold of him right now for 5 minutes. I know I have his cell phone upstairs,
Yeah,
and have him call in. What number would he
that'd
call?
be great. I just love to hear if we heard that
Three
from
four three
him.
six zero 88.
What is it?
3436088.
I'm pretty sure that, I bet if we went.
If we
back
talk
and
to
listened
him, give him a choice.
Yeah.
Well, have
Either
him
calling in
try.
or come in.
Yeah.
He may be done
Yeah.
to come in.
Oh.
Most of them do,
Oh.
rather than.
Do you know if he works days?
He doesn't, but this is about the time that he is pretty responsive.
Yeah, right before his shift is he mid?
Yeah. It's,
Oh.
Or I mean, is he the later shift, evening shift?
Although actually, I think they just transferred him to, so now I don't know. his
Yeah,
current
mid.
shift. But again, they don't mind being called on their cell phones at all
Yeah,
to address
no,
this
not
kind
at
of
all.
stuff.
Okay.
And then we could get this out.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would
so
love
give
to.
me 2 minutes.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm gonna set up the bridge.
sure.
Okay.